The crystalline spires of Nexus Station pierced the void like frozen lightning, their surfaces reflecting the light of 3 distant suns. In the underbelly of this monument to galactic commerce, where the laws of the Confederacy grew thin and the air tasted of recycled desperation, Lewis Harper walked with the careful gait of a man who knew exactly how dangerous he was. His boots echoed against the corrugated metal floors of Sector 7G, a marketplace where beings from 100 worlds came to trade in things the authorities pretended didn't exist. Lewis's augmented eyes scanned the crowd with mechanical precision, cataloging threats, identifying exits, and searching for one specific face in the sea of alien physiognomies. Anna Volkov sat 3 tables away in a dingy establishment that claimed to serve food but mostly trafficked in information. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical bun, and her fingers danced across a holographic interface only she could see, courtesy of the neural implant behind her left ear. She didn't look up as Lewis approached, but he knew she'd tracked his every step since he entered the sector. "You're late," she said, her Russian accent barely noticeable after 15 years in deep space. "Traffic was murder," Lewis replied, sliding into the seat across from her. Literally, there was a Krill honor duel blocking the main transit hub. Anna finally looked up, her gray eyes meeting his. In those eyes, Lewis saw the same thing he saw every morning in the mirror, the particular hardness that came from seeing too much of the galaxy's uglier side and deciding to do something about it. "Did you find him?" Lewis asked, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. Anna's expression darkened. She flicked her fingers, and a holographic image materialized between them, shielded from prying eyes by a privacy field. The creature in the image was a Valkyrian, a species known for their 4 arms, chitinous exoskeletons, and unfortunately, their complete lack of what humans would call conscience. This particular specimen wore the garish jewelry and neural dampeners that marked him as a member of the syndicate. "Kreshnek the Collector," Anna said, her voice tight with controlled fury. "Confirmed sighting 4 hours ago in the Twilight Markets. He's selling." Lewis's jaw clenched. "The Mishara cubs." Among other things. Anna pulled up another image and Lewis felt his stomach turn. 3 small, furred beings huddled in a cage far too small for them. Mishara, one of the galaxy's few remaining pre-spaceflight species, protected by every law the Confederacy had ever written. Their homeworld was quarantined, their contact with advanced civilization strictly forbidden. Yet here they were, stolen from their families, caged like animals. Or rather, caged as animals, because that's exactly what beings like Kreshnek saw them as. "The Mishara Council has been searching for them for 3 standard months," Anna continued. "These cubs were taken during a raid on a peripheral settlement. The Confederacy has a fleet looking in all the wrong places while Kreshnek parades them through black markets like trophies." Lewis studied the image more carefully. The cubs couldn't have been more than juveniles by Mishara standards, equivalent to human children perhaps 8 or 9 years old. Their large, luminous eyes held an intelligence that spoke of sapience, of hopes and fears and the capacity to suffer. One of them had its small paw pressed against the energy field of the cage, and the expression on its face was unmistakably one of desperation. "The intelligence says he's using neural prods to make them perform," Anna added quietly. "Shaking the cage, applying electrical stimulus to make them cry. Apparently, potential buyers find the sounds exotic." Something cold and murderous settled in Lewis's chest. He'd seen many horrors in his 15 years as an independent operative, a career that had started in Earth's Marine Corps and evolved into something the official records would never acknowledge. He'd fought in 3 wars, ended 2 dictatorships, and once prevented a genocide that would have claimed 18 million lives. But there was something about cruelty to children, regardless of their species, that cut through all his professional detachment. "Where is he now?" Lewis asked. "Still in the Twilight Markets. My sources say he's meeting with a Haction crime lord in 2 hours, private sale. After that, the cubs disappear forever into some collector's private menagerie." Anna paused, her fingers stilling on the interface. Lewis, this isn't officially sanctioned. The Confederacy won't back us if this goes sideways. We'd be acting as freelancers, vigilantes even. Lewis smiled, but there was no humor in it. Anna, when have we ever waited for permission to do the right thing? She smiled back, and in that smile was the reason they'd been partners for 7 years. Never, but I had to say it for the record. What record? The one I'm not keeping. The twilight markets existed in a state of perpetual artificial dusk, the lighting carefully calibrated to hide as much as it revealed. Stalls and shops pressed against each other in a maze of commerce where anything could be bought if you had the credits and didn't ask too many questions about origins. Lewis and Anna moved through the crowds like ghosts, their training and experience allowing them to blend despite their human forms being relatively uncommon in this sector. Lewis had changed into nondescript utility clothing that could have belonged to any of a dozen professions, while Anna wore a hooded cloak that obscured her features. "Target is in sublevel 3, Anna whispered, her voice transmitted directly to Lewis's auditory implant. Old storage facility converted into a private showroom. He's got 6 guards, 4 Valkyrian, 2 Haction, all armed with plasma weapons. The Cubs are in a reinforced container near the back." Lewis's augmented eyes mapped the location through the walls, his combat implants painting threat assessments and tactical options across his field of vision. 6 guards were manageable, but the civilian density in the surrounding areas complicated matters. A firefight would endanger innocents and bring security forces down on them before they could extract the Cubs. They needed to be surgical. "I'm detecting a ventilation system that runs directly over the showroom," Anna continued, her own implants interfacing with the station's barely secured infrastructure. "I can drop in from above while you make a frontal distraction." "Or," Lewis countered, "we both go in the front door and convince them to hand over the Cubs peacefully." Anna's snort of laughter was audible even through the implant. "Right, and I'm sure Kreshnek will just see the error of his ways and release them out of the goodness of his non-existent heart." I didn't say convince with words. They positioned themselves at opposite ends of the storage facility, Lewis at the main entrance and Anna near an access shaft that led to the ventilation system. Through his link with Anna's implants, Lewis could see what she saw, a narrow tunnel barely wide enough for a human to crawl through, leading to a grate directly above where thermal imaging showed the Cubs' container. "On my mark," Lewis said. He approached the entrance, his posture relaxed but his mind running through combat scenarios at superhuman speed. The door was guarded by 2 Valkyrians, their 4 arms crossed in a display of casual menace. "This is private property," one of them said in accented galactic standard. "No entry." Lewis smiled pleasantly. "I'm here to see Kreshnek. I have a business proposition." "No appointments, no entry." "He'll want to hear this. I'm representing a collector who's interested in purchasing his entire inventory." Lewis paused, letting greed do its work, "for triple the asking price." The guards exchanged glances, their mandibles clicking in what Lewis had learned to recognize as uncertainty. One of them touched a communicator, spoke rapidly in Valkyrian, then listened to the response. "You may enter," the guard said grudgingly, "but no weapons, submit to scan." Lewis spread his arms, allowing the security scanner to wash over him. It would detect the ceramic knife tucked against his spine, but that was intentional. Give them something to find so they'd feel thorough. They wouldn't detect the microscopic carbon fiber garrote woven into his belt or the pressure point strike enhancements in his skeletal structure. The guards removed his knife with smug satisfaction and gestured him through the door. Lewis walked into a nightmare disguised as a showroom. The space was larger than he'd expected, filled with cages and containers holding beings from across the galaxy. Some he recognized, endangered species, protected fauna, even a few that might have been sentient if anyone had bothered to check. The air stank of fear and waste, and Lewis felt his anger crystallize into something sharp and focused. Kreshnek stood near the center of the room, his chitinous form draped in expensive fabrics that couldn't disguise the predator beneath. His forearms gestured as he spoke to a massive Hakshan, whose scaled hide bore the scars of a long criminal career. But it was the cage behind them that seized Lewis's attention. The three Mishara cubs huddled together, their fur matted and eyes dull with trauma. As Lewis watched, Kreshnek casually reached back and struck the cage with one of his arms. The cubs cried out, a sound like wind chimes being shattered, and Kreshnek laughed. "You see," he said to the Hakshan, "very responsive. The sounds they make are quite unique. Your clients will be most pleased." Something in Lewis's chest went very still and very cold. He'd killed before, in war, in self-defense, in the murky gray areas where justice and vengeance blurred together. But he'd never felt quite this certain about what needed to happen next. "Ah, a new customer," Kreshnek noticed Lewis, his compound eyes glittering. "My guard said you represent a collector." Lewis walked closer, his movements casual, his smile friendly. "I represent justice, but you wouldn't know anything about that." The room went silent. The Hakshan's hand moved toward his weapon. The Velkarian guards tensed. Kreshnek's mandibles spread in what might have been amusement. "Justice?" Kreshnek clicked his mandibles in what passed for laughter among his kind. "You're in the wrong place for such concepts, human. Here we deal in realities, supply and demand, profit and loss." "Then let's talk reality," Lewis said. His voice was calm, almost conversational, but something in his tone made the guards hesitate. "You have approximately 30 seconds to release those cubs and surrender yourself to Confederacy authorities. After that, the reality gets messy." Now Kreshnek laughed openly. "Bold words from one unarmed human surrounded by my guards. Do you know what I am, human? I am Kreshnek the Collector. I have survived assassination attempts from Confederacy Black Ops teams. I have escaped from maximum security facilities. What makes you think?" He didn't finish the sentence. Anna dropped through the ventilation grate like a vengeful angel, her plasma pistol already firing. 2 guards went down before their nervous systems could register the threat. Lewis moved simultaneously, his body a weapon honed by years of training and enhanced by military-grade augmentations. The nearest guard swung a plasma rifle toward him, but Lewis was already inside his reach. His palms strike to the Velkarian's neural cluster, dropping the alien like a severed puppet. He flowed into the next movement, his borrowed momentum carrying him into a spinning kick that shattered a second guard's exoskeleton. The Hakshan crime lord proved more challenging. His scales absorbed the first blow that would have killed a human, and his massive fist crashed toward Lewis's head with bone-crushing force. Lewis rolled under it, his fingers finding the pressure points in the Hakshan's inner thigh that Anna's intelligence briefings had identified. The alien bellowed in pain and collapsed. Anna had taken out 3 more guards with a combination of precision shooting and close-quarters combat that would have made their old drill instructors weep with pride. That left only Kreshnek, who had grabbed one of the Mishara cubs from the cage and held it with one arm while 3 others reached for weapons. "Stop!" Kreshnek shrieked. "Stop or I crush this creature's skull." Lewis froze, but his mind was already calculating angles, speeds, probabilities. Anna had her weapon trained on Kreshnek, but the shot was too risky with the cub as a shield. The Mishara cub whimpered, a sound that cut through the air like a knife. Its small paw reached toward its siblings, still in the cage, their cries joining its own. Kreshnek shook the cub viciously and it screamed. "You see," Kreshnek hissed, "this is what they do, this is why they're valuable, the sounds." He didn't get to finish explaining. Lewis had been waiting for exactly this moment, the instant when Kreshnek's attention focused on demonstrating his cruelty, when his guard dropped just a fraction. The carbon fiber garrote flew from Lewis's hand with superhuman precision, wrapping around Kreshnek's arm, Not the one holding the cub, but the one reaching for a weapon. Lewis pulled hard. The molecular thin fiber cut through chitin like tissue paper. Kreshnak shrieked and dropped the cub. Anna was already moving, catching the small being before it hit the ground. Lewis crossed the distance to Kreshnak in 3 steps. What happened next was not what Lewis had planned. Professional detachment would have dictated a clean capture, a turnover to authorities, due process. But as he grabbed Kreshnak by what passed for a throat among Valkyrians, as he heard the continued cries of the traumatized cubs, as he saw the complete absence of remorse in the creature's compound eyes, something fundamental shifted in Lewis Harper. "You shook that cub to make it cry," Lewis said, his voice barely above a whisper. His grip tightened. "Let me return the favor." Kreshnak clawed at Lewis's arm with his remaining hands, but Lewis's augmented strength was absolute. He lifted the Valkyrian off the ground and shook. Once, twice, 3 times, with precisely calculated force. Not enough to kill instantly, but enough to ensure that Kreshnak understood, in his final moments, exactly what terror felt like. "Lewis," Anna's voice cut through the red haze. "The cubs are secure, we need to move." Lewis looked into Kreshnak's eyes and saw the exact moment when the creature realized it was going to die. There was no negotiation to be had, no mercy to be begged for. Just the cold, certain knowledge that this human, this supposedly weak, supposedly compassionate species, had found the line that could not be crossed. Lewis shook Kreshnak one final time, and something vital inside the Valkyrian's body broke with an audible crack. The creature went limp. Lewis held him for a moment longer, ensuring there was no chance of resuscitation, then dropped the body to the floor. "The other cubs?" Lewis asked, his voice returning to normal as if he hadn't just committed what the law would probably call murder. "All secure," Anna replied. She had the 3 Mishara cubs wrapped in a thermal blanket, their large eyes still frightened but no longer hopeless. "I've already contacted the Mishara Council. They're sending a diplomatic vessel. We just need to get to the extraction point." They moved quickly through the twilight markets, Anna carrying the cubs while Lewis ran interference, his reputation and obvious willingness to use force clearing a path. Behind them, alarms began to sound as someone discovered Kreshnak's body and the carnage in the storage facility. The extraction point was a private docking bay that Anna had secured through one of her many contacts, beings who owed her favors or feared her capabilities enough to provide assistance when needed. A sleek courier ship waited, its engines already warming. As they boarded, one of the Mishara cubs, the one Kreshnak had held, reached out a small paw and touched Lewis's hand. The gesture was tentative, questioning. Lewis knelt down to the cub's level and smiled, the expression transforming his face from something hard and dangerous into something almost gentle. "You're safe now," he said softly. "You're going home." The cub's luminous eyes studied him, and Lewis wondered what it saw. A monster who had killed without hesitation. A protector who had risked everything. Perhaps both. Perhaps neither. In the end, it didn't matter. What mattered was that these 3 small beings would return to their families, would grow up free, would never again know the terror of a cage and a dealer's cruel hands. Anna piloted the ship away from Nexus Station with the skill of someone who'd fled worse situations. As they accelerated toward the rendezvous coordinates with the Mishara diplomatic vessel, Lewis stood at the viewport and watched the station recede into the distance. "No regrets?" Anna asked quietly. Lewis thought about Kreshnak's final moments, about the choice he'd made to be judge, jury, and executioner. By the laws of the Confederacy, what he'd done was murder. There would be no medals, no official recognition, possibly even sanctions if his identity became known. "None," he said finally. "Some lines can't be uncrossed, some people, some beings. They forfeit the right to mercy when they prey on the helpless." Anna nodded. She'd known his answer before asking, had perhaps needed to hear him say it aloud more for her own sake than his. They'd both crossed lines today that couldn't be uncrossed. They'd both made choices that would haunt them and comfort them in equal measure. The Mishara diplomatic vessel appeared on sensors, its elegant design a stark contrast to the utilitarian courier ship. As they prepared to transfer the cubs, Lewis allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. 3 children were going home. One monster would never hurt anyone again. In the grand scheme of the galaxy, it was a small victory. But small victories, he'd learned, were the ones that mattered most. The transfer completed smoothly, and as the Mishara ship departed with its precious cargo, Lewis and Anna set course for the edges of civilized space, where beings like them operated in the shadows between law and justice, doing the work that needed doing, making the choices that needed making. Behind them, Nexus Station broadcast alerts about a murder in Sector 7G. Confederacy security forces would investigate, question witnesses, file reports. They would never find the perpetrators, and somewhere in the databases of a dozen criminal organizations, the word would spread. The humans Lewis Harper and Anna Volkov were not to be trifled with. They were not bound by conventional morality or diplomatic niceties. They were something the galaxy hadn't seen in generations, true believers in justice, willing to pay any price to protect the innocent. In the cargo hold of their ship, Lewis found Anna checking their weapons and preparing for whatever came next. She looked up as he entered, and they shared a moment of understanding that needed no words. "Where to next?" she asked. Lewis pulled up a holographic star chart, dozens of systems marked with reports of injustice, cruelty, and beings who thought themselves untouchable. He smiled, and it was the smile of a predator who had found his purpose. "Wherever we're needed," he said, "wherever children cry and monsters think they're safe." Anna's answering smile matched his own. "Then we'd better stock up on ammunition." As their ship jumped to hyperspace, leaving Nexus Station and the body of Kreshnak the Collector far behind, the 3 Mishara cubs were already halfway home, carried by beings who understood that some crimes could not be forgiven, only avenged. And in the darkness between the stars, 2 humans continued their endless mission, shaking monsters until they stopped breathing, one dealer, one slaver, one predator at a time. The galaxy, Lewis thought, was about to learn what humanity meant by the phrase, "Suffer the little children to come unto me." It meant that anyone who harmed them would suffer far, far more. And